Hi, I'm Dorothy Dent, and today we're going to paint Colorado Waterfall. I think you'll really enjoy painting this little picture. It has very few colors and not too many brushes, but good results. So follow along if you wish. We're going to get right into it. Here's the colors we're going to be using today. This one is titanium white. This is cad yellow medium, cadmium orange, burnt sienna, raw umber, and Payne's gray. These are Martin F. Weber Permalba paints. It's good to use the same ones that I'm using if you can find them, because that way your colors are going to mix the same. If you change brands of paint, you can usually change color a little bit. It'll be okay, I'm sure, but they're better if you can find the Permalba paints. These are my brushes that I use. These are Dorothy Dent brushes, but if you have some that's similar, I'm sure they'd probably be all right. This is the fan brush. It's a size 4, and this is the one I call a small background brush, and it's a size 6. And then this is a number 8 in a flat. I just call this my detail flat. And this is the liner, just a little number 1 or number 2 liner. But these 4 brushes are all you're really going to need to do today's painting. In this little cup is some medium. This is liquid glaze. It's also made by the Martin Weber Paint Company. This will thin your paint, and it also helps speed the drying time. And in this little container here is just some odorless brush cleaner, some odorless turp. I usually will use the Turpenoid by Weber, or any other brand that you want to use. I'm sure will be fine. You always want a little bit of paper towels handy, so stack of paper towels. And then I think we're ready to paint. Okay, let's mix our color for our sky. I always like to start with whatever's the farthest thing away in the painting. And if you're doing a background, it's going to be your sky. So I'm picking up some white from there, and then I'm reaching over here to the Payne's gray, which is going to be our blue in the painting. Payne's gray is a blue. When you mix it with white, you get a nice soft blue. So I'm mixing enough white in there. I have a very soft blue and not a real dark blue. And I'll see if that's about the color I want, and yes, I think that's about right. So I'll be reaching down and picking up more paint as I go along, but I'm remixing as I go. And sometimes you get a little bit more dark, like there, and sometimes it's more white in it and it comes out lighter. And that's what you want. You want a little variation to the color. So I'm going to lay it down where you can't see it, but then as I reach down and pick up more paint, I'm just doing this same thing over and over. If I feel like I need to thin it just a little bit, I pick up some of the medium that was in that cup that I was showing you a minute ago. And then I come right back up here, and my brush strokes just really go all different directions here. So you don't need to get in too big a hurry. But we want to just pick up a little bit, nice load at a time, and not get the paint too thick or too heavy on here. We want to cover the canvas, but that's all that we really need to do. We don't need a ton of paint. And these are going to be trees that I'm bumping into right here, and so I'm going to overlap a bit. You can see the pattern lines. I sketched on the pattern here before we started, and you'll have a pattern that you can print out on your computer, so you will have the pattern that you can trace onto the canvases as well, and so that way you don't have to do any freehand drawing. You just trace it on here and use graphite paper to lay under your pattern to get it to transfer. Now that I've got that little area done, now there's going to be a tree in here, as you can tell by looking at your picture there. So we're going to skip over that and move to this other little area here where we're also doing sky. So we're continuing on over here with our light blue. It's going to be some nice blue back in behind these trees. And so we'll be sure and get all this in before we start trees. And I like to paint over the lines. You don't want to, again, I mentioned a while ago, but you don't want to paint right up against that line. Line is just a suggestion of about where the edge of those trees are going to be. And so we'll get up there close to it, but it doesn't have to we don't have to see that line. We know where it's going to be. We're just painting over the edge of it. So we're again just going all different directions with the brush strokes. Try to get all of the paint down into the grain of the canvas as you go, because that's important. We want it to look like it's painted, all completely painted, and not seeing unpainted canvas back in behind the blue. So we'll try to make that fill in nicely. Come on over here. These little trees are not going to be the exact shape they're drawn in. That's just, again, a suggestion of where they're going to be, and we'll create our own trees as we get to them. Get over here against the edge of the canvas. We probably will have just a little bit of sky that would be peeking out behind those trees, and so we'll get that in too. And this is just about finishing up our sky. I think we've got it all. If we don't, we'll put in some later. I believe that's it for the sky.
Rolling.
Okay, now then, we've got our sky in, so I'm going to start with trees. If you look closely to your picture, you'll see there's some rather light value trees. It's back in the distance there, and we're going to start with some of our same mix that we've been using, only it's got more Payne's Gray in it. This is Payne's Gray and white still, but heavier on the Payne's Gray, so that it has a darker value than the sky, but still we're going to see that these are little trees way back in the distance, and these are very abstract, and you really don't have a pattern for them, don't need one. This is just working in some of that sky area. These will actually run off the top of the canvas, kind of come over irregular, so everything doesn't wind up in a straight line. We want it a little uneven there. And then let's come on over this way just a little bit. And I think we don't need too much more of that. And what I'm going to do next then is begin with some of the darker values that we see in the picture, and these would be your darker trees, the ones that's closer. So I'm going to pick up almost straight Payne's Gray. You can also have a little bit of raw umber in it. I'm getting just a little touch of medium in there, just a tiny bit. And I'm just going to start over here on this other side now. So we'll begin over here. And these are just very, very dark values. You've got to get a lot of strong dark on your painting somewhere in order for it to have good contrast. And people shy away from the dark. They think, oh, it's too dark, it's too dark. But you can't get light values to look light unless you buff them up against them with some dark. So this is all of that nice dark value you're seeing there. I had some marks there that kind of indicated some little tree trunks, but we're painting those out. We'll remember approximately where they are, and we'll be adding some of those tree trunks later on in the painting. And again, I want to brush the strokes different directions so it gets down in the texture of the canvas. Sometimes people like to use a larger brush for this kind of an area here, and it would be fine to do a little bigger brush, but sometimes also people feel uncomfortable with a large brush. They feel out of control. So for beginner painters especially, it's maybe sometimes better to keep smaller brushes going, so that's what we're using today. And as you come up against the sky, you're going to find you pick up a little bit of the white of the sky, and that's fine. We're going to have some light greens on some of this tree area anyway, so it doesn't have to be too perfect or anything like that. Just getting our darks in. When I'm picking up my Payne's Gray and raw umber, I'm also picking up just a little bit of medium. You can get medium so thin sometimes that it runs, or it makes your painting look too transparent, so we don't want that, because this is a dark area here that we want it to stay dark. And I'm coming down toward this line, that kind of uneven line back here toward the back, and under those trees is going to be little edges of light. So we'll leave that unpainted. There's a line right there that you may or may not see there on your canvas as I'm working, but I'm stopping at the top line. So that'll be where we'll quit with the dark tree shapes. But we've got more to fill in over here on this other side, so just keep coming. And keep painting in your nice strong darks. When I pick up a little bit of raw umber with the dark Payne's Gray, it keeps it from looking quite so blue. It keeps the dark value going. I don't want to get so much raw umber that it would look brown, though. I don't want to get into that much. But mixed with the Payne's Gray, it makes a good black. This part's pretty easy. I don't think you'll have any trouble at all with this because it's just a matter of filling it in. But eventually this will have some highlights over it and we'll make it look like foliage. But right now we've just got dark black. The black value anyway. I can see a little bit of difference between what I've done that had more Payne's Gray in it and what I've done here that looks like it has more of the black look where I've added the raw umber. But either way, it's going to be just fine. Try to avoid, as you paint, try to avoid doing this. Don't take the edge of the brush and make little narrow lines. I see that students doing that sometime, and it doesn't get your much coverage very quickly. It makes it go slow, and then it gives it a stripy look. So it's better to stay on the flat of the brush as you lock all of this in. That way it covers nicely and you don't get the stripes. Notice on the outside edge that I'm not stopping in a real sharp line. It's uneven. Foliage is always uneven. It's not going to be something that will stop in a perfect straight line. It looks too unreal if you let it do that. So we're going to have that dark area right there filled in. And while I'm doing dark, I'm going to change my brush now, and you'll see why, because we're going to make this look more like a pine tree effect over here on this one. So I'm going to come over just a wee bit more with this brush, and I'm going to reach down and pick up my fan brush and go back into the same colors with my fan, Payne's Gray Raw Umber. Now then, the edge of this tree needs to look more like what you would think of as a pine tree shape. So if you use the side of your brush, and I'm working kind of on the padding with the side of it, and pull right on out into the sky, you see little branches that makes you think of pine trees. Don't want to cover up all my sky, but I'm coming on down. And here we're coming in. Stop somewhere maybe along in here. And it can look real soft, kind of loose and messy. Loose and messy is good. And in here, center of it, I'm just working it in, just kind of working it down there pretty good. And then on this side, it's going to do the same idea with your branches. Payne's Gray Raw Umber, little medium, quite a bit of medium in this. I like the paint to go on just a little bit thin. And you can use the side of your brush over here, or you can even come in on the end of the bristles. It makes it look a little puffier. I think it goes actually a little bit faster with the fan brush. filling in. You're beginning to see a silhouette there. It looks like a pine tree a little bit. Okay, I'm coming down to about right there for now, and I'm going to stop and pick up another color. We're going into some yellow here so that we can come back and add some yellow edges on our trees and have some nice little edges on some of the leaves, even over in this large dark area. I'm going to do all that with my fan brush, and I think we're going to not need to clean the brush. I'm just going to come down and add a little yellow to the brush, maybe just a tiny bit of white. Yellow, white, and the dirty brush will give us a green color, because this being a blue with your dark blue, and then you add yellow to blue and you always get green of some shade of green. Want this to be a little bright here, so we're coming in along the edges, just tapping with the fan brush and let it come back into the dark value of the center of the trees. So I'm continuing on now with this. This is yellow, and it does have just a little bit of white. Don't get too much, just a little bit. We don't want it to have a chalky look. And I'm coming in and trying to start a little bit more on this outside edge. The sun is catching these little edges of the leaves and making it look a greener color. Coming on down and on down. Right down here toward the bottom somewhere. I'm going to pick up quite a bit more yellow. If you can see, I'm just kind of on the corner of the brush there. Try not to put the whole brush down like this, because what it does is make an arch. So see, I'm really working on the corner of the brush, and that way you just get a nice puffy look that looks more like foliage. Come on down maybe about to there. And then I'm picking up some more of that, and when I pick the paint up, I'm working on about half of the brush. So you can see I'm loading about the bottom half of the brush, and the top half over here still just has dark on it. I'm going to skip a little area of dark and come over in toward the center now. And I'm tapping with the corner of the brush, so you can maybe see there that's working on that corner. And let it just fade back into the shadows. You don't want lots of paint on this, because then you're going to lose your dark. I want just enough paint to show up so you can see your foliage, but it still has a very muted look at the back. It's not bright colors. It's just real soft. I have a soft green. Each time I reach down, I'm just reloading with more yellow white, just a bit. Sometimes I take my brush and kind of push it up a little bit and then pull down. And that releases the paint right along the edge of your foliage, so it looks more like you're getting the edge of a bush. But I think a fan brush does great foliage. It's a brush that people love to hate, but it works nice if you can just get the angle of the green on there. Just get it on the corner, remember you're not using the whole brush. Let it kind of fade away. You can put sometimes it helps to step back and look at it from a distance and see where you might want to put a little bit more. If you've got an area that looks too round or square or something like that, you might want to redo it a bit. We'll have some branches and tree trunks up through this later, but not quite yet. Okay, that's about to be enough over here on this one. And then I'm going to move on over to this tree here, and I'm going to put some light greens and yellow greens along the edge of it. Okay, so we're going to pick up just a little bit more of the green. I'm going to tap a little bit in this tree too. Some toward the center of the tree and a little bit toward the edges. And everybody's painting is going to look different, you know that. So every time I paint something, it looks a little different from the one I had painted earlier. So it's just impossible to get it exactly the same. So we don't even try. We just try to have fun with it and get it in the same general area of colors and not worry about it if every stroke isn't just like the original painting. Stepping back and looking, I think I need just a little bit more light yellow greens over here against the sky. So I'm coming back to this area and putting a few more bright edges in. Kind of let it fade down into these trees. That's better. It never hurts to go back and do some touch-ups as you go along in your painting. And let's see, we're going to skip this little sky area over here, and I think we need a little bit of greenery over here on this little tree, where I may need to put a few dark areas in first. So let's move over here and continue on with my light greens and a little bit of highlights, and also maybe a little bit of dark picked up. Since I didn't have any dark at all on this tree, I need to add some as I come along. Kind of a skinnier little tree over here, and he's kind of in the distance. Coming down somewhere along in here. There's going to be some ground and some grass kind of in through this lower area here. And again, you want to watch your color picture that you have to look at as you're painting so that you get the general darks and lights approximately where they belong. So I'm going to get a little bit of dark in there. That's just above where this little light path's coming down through there, a little space between the trees. And we still have one more tree to go over here to the side, and I'm going back into my dark values now. Payne's gray, a little bit of the raw umber. And these trees are pretty tall. This one could go off the top of the canvas, or perhaps not. We may just decide it should stay about in here somewhere. I'll turn my fan brush this way and that so I get some little branches. All these trees can overlap each other, of course. They do that out in the woods. Now I'm coming on down with some more of my darks. Coming almost off the edge of the canvas here. Just remember, even though you get it really, really dark, if you think it's too dark, we can always add more highlights to it. So there's no way you can ruin it entirely, because we can always find some way to fix them. That's what I'd always tell the students, don't worry, we can always fix it. And then they see that you actually can fix it, and it kind of relieves some of that fear. Okay, picking up a little bit more black as we go along here, the black mix, the raw and the Payne's gray still. So we're coming right into these trees here. They're looking good. You may hear the train going by, folks. We have 36 trains go through the public every day. So it's hard to have a little space in there where you don't hear the train. A lot of students like to hear the train. They'll say, oh, I like to hear that train. I live where we never hear a train. I said, well, move to Republic. You can have all the trains you want to listen to. Coming on down, still working with these dark values. You'll be glad when we're moving on to another color here shortly. Oh no, there's going to be a little light area coming kind of down through this center in here. We're going to come in with all this dark like we're doing and kind of loosen it up and come out over the edges a little bit of things. And then we'll come back and pull some of this dark on each side into the middle along with some yellow, and we get some nice little light path coming through there. And on this area here, I'm kind of skipping around here just a little bit and getting more filled in some places that I feel like we're probably going to need it. We can always come back and put more dark in as well as needed. Some areas look lighter and some areas look darker. It's just depending on what we've got in the brush at the time. I'm going to fill down into this little corner right in here. It's going to be a little bank underneath this dark area that's going to go right in through here, so we don't want to cover that up. That's going to be a little lighter area of dirt. We'll come in with some of our burnt sienna orangey colors and make it look like it's dirty area, but the sun is shining on it. Now you need this nice stiff fan brush. I hope yours is stiff. If you have a little synthetic fan brush, you'll have to get a stiffer one, because you want these bristles to really push that paint around, and sometimes people try to work with the wrong brush and it doesn't do so good. It's just too thin. Okay, I'm going to stop right, well, let's do just a few more strokes here, and then we're going to stop and change to a lighter value. And we'll have most of these dark areas already looking pretty satisfactory. And again, don't be afraid if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, because mine doesn't look like mine either after I paint several. Everyone's different. But that's part of the fun. Okay, we're going to start right there, and I'm going to change, I'm going to wipe my brush out. I don't think there's any need to actually clean it. I'm just going to wipe it a little bit on a paper towel. Always have your paper towels handy. That's what I'll clean my brushes along as I go. Then I'm going to pick up some yellow and white mixed to a light value, so it has a little more white in it. And there's a light green. See, check your color. Just kind of tap it up there, see if it looks like a light green with enough white in it that it's not looking too harsh. And then right in through this center here, I'm just going to come in with a little bit of that light catching into the dark on the sides. So you're going to pull just a little bit of the dark over into this little light area right here. I'm just kind of scooting it in right now just to kind of say this is where it is. You can feel like you can walk back through the woods here a little bit shortly, maybe. Kind of blur it a little bit at the top. You're going to lose some of this dark on the sides, but you can come out back over it just a little bit with the corner of the brush, soften it down just a wee bit. Maybe about to there, possibly just a stroke or two more here. Okay. And then while I'm right in this area where I see it's still pretty dark, I'm going to pick up just a little bit more of my yellow and blue that's just a little bit darker green and tap in along that edge. Wasn't that much darker, but that's okay. I want a soft looking edge here. Some of this will be little bushes down here, so we could actually make a little edge on some of them. And come along that way. Okay. I'm going to change brushes now. I'm going to clean my brushes in my turp, so I'm going to come down and dip in my little turp can there. Wash this out. And I'm going to change colors, and I'm going to pick up a little white and orange. Just a little bit of orange and a little bit of burnt sienna. Still going to use the fan brush for this. So I'm going to take a color that's going to be about like what you're seeing here. There's orange, a little white, touch of burnt sienna. It's going to be some of our dirt color. I'm coming in right in under this yellow and just putting in, scrubbing in just a little bit of that orangey value. Now let me pick this palette up where you can see what I'm doing with my mixing, because I'm going to mix a little bit of this rusty orange now. And I decided to switch over to my flat brush. This is the detail flat. Picking up a little orange, a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little bit of white. I just try to find a color that's going to give me kind of a ground color that looks kind of rusty and like the light's hitting it. Be a nice contrast against the dark values. So you can see I'm just picking up a little bit, kind of watching my mix as I stir it around, so I think it's going to be a good color. And this is catching ground right in under the trees. Going right in beneath them, kind of scrubby it in just a little bit. We'll have to come back with some little soft edges on those bushes, I think, shortly. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of it and come right in under the trees over here. We're going to have a little bank that comes down toward the water. Just find a little area on your canvas there where you've got some room to get just a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange, a little bit of white, and come in under the dark. And when you catch into the dark, see, it makes a nice little blue-gray that looks soft back in under there. We're going to have some dark right by the waterfall, so I'm leaving a little area there that would be more open. And then I'm coming all in under these trees here. Let's just go ahead and pull some orangey, burnt sienna white mixture right in through there. Okay, that's kind of neat. Right in under these trees way over here. Let's go to the other side of the canvas here if we can, and scoot in a little bit under these trees as well while we've got it in the brush. Okay. Now then, I'm going to come back to my fan brush. I'll set my painting palette down. Come back to the fan brush. I'm going to clean it. Dip it in my turp and get my paper towel here, and I'm going to wipe it off. Then I'm going to come right back into the dark here and pull some of these trees right out over the edge of that little dirt area there, so they look like that they're in front. Just look at your picture and see what feels like a too sharp an edge or too flat an edge, and you can create that into little weeds and bushes and stuff. It's the stuff that looks good. Just a little grassy stuff looks nice too, little downward strokes along the edges. Got a little path now, kind of working back toward the sunny little field back there. Okay. Pulling a little dark up here against where I'm going to have a little bank right there. Okay, now that I'm going in under all of this bushy stuff and just giving a little shadow under there, a little soft blurry shadow, a little blue-green. And changing brushes again, I'm going to pick up now again my small background brush, the bristle brush. I'm going to take my burnt umber, or raw umber it is, raw umber and Payne's Gray, and I'm going to come right against the waterfall. Right here is a good strong shadow that we don't want to lose. Get a little shadow in there. And all down in here is going to be some little rocks or whatever you would expect to find around a waterfall would be rocks and trees and all the little brushy stuff. Coming down to the edge of the water. That line right through there is the edge of your water. And over that edge just a bit. Some of the strong darks I come back and put in later too. After we get most everything done, we look at the painting and make some adjustments, whatever needs to be made as far as adjusting color. Just a little bit more light coming over to the edge and maybe just dropping over to create a little bit of a bank that drops off toward the stream of water. Pulling just a little bit of light over that dark, see, makes that little drop right there. Okay, I'm going to go back just for a second with my fan brush and pick up a little bit of the light greens again, because we've got to get a little bit of highlight on this little tree here that we've kind of left dark. So I'm going to come into it with some of my yellows again, the light yellow greens. You can come on over in the tree, stagger it back and forth, kind of back and forth until we get the edges of some of the foliage showing. It doesn't all need to be real light, so kind of watch the amount of paint that you put on your brush so that you're not overkilling on the light colors. We want enough to add some shape to the trees, but not enough to be so thick that the colors don't look good together. Okay, we're about to get all of our little shrubbery in. Here's a little dark area that needs just a little bit of highlight. Okay, now then, we've got a lot of trees in here, a lot of trees, a lot of foliage. We need just a few little branches and a few little sticks and stems to make it look like it's trees. It's amazing what a few little trunk lines and a few limbs will do to make an area like this with a lot of variation of color look like you've got trees in there. I'm going to pick up my detail flat this time. Get just a little bit of orangey white on one side of the brush. I'm setting it down on the narrow edge and coming down through, and that's going to give me a little trunk line. Okay, so these little trunks are coming up through here. So you can make them, some of them a little wider and some of them a little skinnier. They can lean different directions. But all I did now, folks, is get a little bit of orangey white on one side of the brush. Don't put it on both sides. This side doesn't really have any on it. It's all on one side. And I'm going to come in with the light side facing right. And when you come down here, now I didn't have much paint on the brush there, and so I got a blue-gray trunk line, which is what you want, some of those. And if you want it to be more orangey, see, you got to reload and get a little more orange on that one side. Still not quite enough to make it come off. Let's get a little bit more. There it comes. See, that puts a little edge on there, and they can come back through the leaves and the woods and skip a little bit, do a line and skip a line, so that you get some misty ones, blue-gray ones that's back in the shadows. If you push harder, see, the harder you push, the wider your trunk gets, which is good. Okay, I'm gonna come in now with my liner. So we're gonna thin that paint with the liner, and this is your orangey white still yet. But I'm thinning it with turp instead of medium. Sometimes my little fingernail goes down to kind of steady my hand as I make the little small limbs coming off the trees. These are little wiggly branches that are leafless. Or perhaps some of the leaves may want to go on them in a minute. We can soften them down and smudge them back a little bit if we want some limbs on them. And leaves as well. Just kind of move around to where you see some that you might want to add. If you put in a few that you don't like or you think that they're too bright, if you clean your brush out and take just a little brush and kind of pat just a little bit, you'll tap them down and they'll disappear back into the shadows. Some of mine need to disappear, I think. But the light can come in there and just hit them and makes it look like you've got all kinds of woods back in there. So remember, our process was to go dark and then light, dark background, lighter leaves, lighter greens, then add your little trunks. Sometimes people say, oh, I want to put my trunks in first so I can see where my leaves go. But when they do that, they usually wind up regretting it because it doesn't work as well. Especially if you have a lot of thick woods like we're having in this picture here. You want to do your foliage first and then just do your little bits and pieces of leaves. You can have just a little bit of a bank along that edge where you might have a few little blue-gray rocks or something here. The water's going to be coming in through there shortly. Now let's move over to the other side and see if we can get some branches and trunks in this tree right here. So we'll come in here and we'll get just a few little trunks kind of coming in and out of the foliage. So I've got a trunk there, and I'm going to skip over here and I'm going to put one, let's see, where do we want another one? We can have one in through here and that make it come all the way down to here. All the way down into the foreground there. Some of these old trunks are kind of dead, so they don't have too many leaves or anything off of them. They're just kind of there. And let's put, while we're doing the main trunks, let's put a little bit over here on the far left. Pick up enough color here. This one can kind of lean in a little bit, perhaps. Let's put another one up here somewhere. Chisel edge of the brush, coming right down, push a little harder and they get wider at the bottom. Then I'm going to switch over to my liner. Get just a little bit of that thinned orangey white out the color of whatever your trunk was. Just a few little dead limbs. Like that one there, it's going to make an X. If it makes an X, see how easy you can remove them? Everybody needs to know that nothing is forever unless you want it to be. Okay, I'm going to take up my little flat brush now. I switched over and I got my detail flat, which is this little flat brush, and I'm going to put just a little bit more dark right up against the waterfall. A little bit of shadows back in there. This is probably a little rocky ledge of a thing back there. Get some little rocks in there. They're just little bits of dark, like your raw umber would be good for a rock color. Those little orangey ones look like about too many. I'll take one or two of them out. This little trunk here, this big one, could be a little bit darker on the back side, perhaps. It could even be a little bit wider. It's coming all the way down into the foreground, so it could be darker. Dark values come forward, light values go away. So when you've got a trunk you want to be up front, you need to make it a little bit more on the dark side. And your trunks and limbs and all of this stuff's going to be in different places than mine, I'm sure. Just look at your picture and decide where you want to put a few. Because they can move around just so you've got some and enough of it that it looks interesting. Okay. I think we're going to leave that for now, and that doesn't mean we won't come back to it. We may come back to it later. But we're going to leave it for now, and I'm going to come in next, and we're going to start some on the waterfall. Okay, let's work on this waterfall here now. I think we're ready for that. Kind of straighten this back bank up a little bit or back there so it doesn't pitch over. Okay, now that I'm going to pick up some Payne's Gray, and I'm coming right into this water. The water is falling over the dam that's here that we really can't see any of the dam, but this water is very dark, black water back here in the shadows. And we're going to come over with the direction that the water is falling, which is curve it down just a little bit. I'm not going to paint the foamy patterns. I'm going to leave those for later, so don't paint the foam, just paint the dark parts that you see, which is mostly just all Payne's Gray. We'll leave a little bit of that light along the edges. If you happen not to have any light back there, you can put it back in with a little bit of that orangey white. And this needs to be real dark here. It's coming over, it's coming over, it's coming over, and it's hitting rocks as it falls. That's why we got all the churning foamy patterns. And again, yours can be a little different from mine and still be perfectly fine. In fact, it might be better. So I'm right there, and then see, all this is going to be your foam down here. So I'm leaving that open for right now. And let's see, we'll go back here, and we've got some rocks here that we can go ahead and put in since we're in this area. Picking up a little bit more Payne's Gray for the water parts here, and this is all foam down here, so we'll leave that. These two little lines here are just little limbs, or maybe a tree trunk that's down or something that's over the edge of the falls, and we'll paint it out, but then we'll come back and put it back in. So this is, again, just your Payne's Gray, and I'm going to leave it about like that. And then I'm going to wipe the brush a little bit and pick up some raw umber. And we're going to paint this in as a rock. So I'm going to leave just a little bit of an edge so we know where it is, and then we'll put some highlight on it. It's a little browner than the water since it's Payne's Gray. Well, the water's Payne's Gray, and this is raw umber. More to the raw umber. And come on down along the edge here. I'm just painting out those little fallen over tree trunks, because we'll find them again, or some just like them. Okay, so there's the base coat on what would be rock. And then I'm going to, don't even need to clean the brush. I'm just picking up a little orange and a touch of white, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna, so we're getting something to highlight with. See, it's kind of an orangey color. And so you're going to see that, and then you're coming in like this, and there's the top of the rock and kind of coming over the edge a bit. Try to leave a little bit of the dark. We're not going to lose it all. I'm just reloading with a little orangey white again. Coming over here, kind of pull it down just a bit. Skip some areas where you could have some dark shadows on the sides of the rock. And maybe I need just a little bit more dark back in here. Lost some of it that I needed. Come back in and put a little bit more dark here. After this water comes in and starts churning on the sides, we'll probably need to come back and touch up the edge of the rocks a little, but for right now, that's pretty good right there. We'll leave it at that point and let me clean the brush. Okay, I'm coming in now again with the Payne's Gray, and I'm coming under the waterfall, so this is under where the foamy water is going to be. It's going to come crashing over, and then your water is going to be darker here again. This is real black water. It's real shaded in there. So we've got all this little space where the water's running from, it comes over, it splashes, and then it's running flat again. So we always go with the direction that something is going. So when this is flat, then you move your strokes back and forth rather than up and down. If it's curving, you go with the curve of it. If it's flat, you go with the flat of it. If it's something vertical, you paint it with vertical strokes. That makes a lot of difference, the direction that you use as you fill it in. Okay, again, this is Payne's Gray, and this is flat part of the water where it comes over, it hits, it splashes, and then it runs off flat again. We can put some highlights, and we'll put some highlights in this so our water has some light in it too. And coming on down this way, it's still dark. And we got a big bunch of rocks right here, down here, that we haven't painted yet, of course. But those are going to be some dark rocks that the water is going to be spilling around them, and maybe just a little bit over them when we get to those. And this is water. You have to be careful that your water is staying down here where it would be and doesn't get out of the banks. Okay. Okay, now then down here, this is also water, but we've got it pouring. It is pouring over this way here, and then it comes down, it runs flatter, and then it pours over this way again. See, it's going to go over this area, so you've got actually two or three waterfalls before we get done with it. But you've got the upper falls, and then you've got the lower falls, and the lower falls is broken up into 2 or 3 little falls there, but we'll figure those out as the time comes. As I come down this way, here's my bank line. We've got to come back and paint another bank shortly. But this is going to be water too. And I've got quite a bit of white in this water. I'm going to pick up some white along with my blue. And this is going to run kind of like this with the light blue water. See how I'm going back and forth now. Oops, I think I about lost some of my bank up there. I'll have to come back and put it back in. I looked away and the water kept moving. Gonna get out of the bank. Okay, there's the water down here, so We'll stay on this side for a few minutes, and we'll come back up here and fix our bank. Okay, now then this is water. See, we've got that established as water. So then we'll come up here, and this is a bank that's going to have some browns and golds and sunlit colors on it, and some of the raw umber again. It's going to go back here, and a little Payne's Gray can be also in the brush. And I'm leaving some room for my highlights. See, the light's going to come in, and we're going to catch some of that orangey light and put it right there on that side of that rock area. Okay, so we're going to keep blocking in this bank on the shadowed side of it, which is kind of the down side here. Well, remember our light's coming from the, actually coming from the right, and so it's going to hit on the right side of this rock. So we'll leave that unpainted. Get a little bit of dark right down against the water maybe, but this will just be your shadows here on the rock. I can quit right about there now, I think, and clean my brush. And I'm going to pick up my burnt sienna and my orange, touch of white. We're going to come on this light side of the rock. Now just come down and get some light on there, and come on over into the dark a bit. And come on over, get some more orangey white there, and come down to the edge of the rocks. Kind of pull over the edge a bit so it lifts it away from the water. Get a little dark there so it's not right in the water. The orangey part is not. Dark side of the rock needs to show us just a dark value, and then skip it a little bit before you put another light streak in, so there's some contrast there between your lights and your darks. We'll take a smaller brush here in a minute and detail out that dark just a little bit better. Okay, let's see now then. I probably will want to leave that about where it is right there. Let's see, we might want just a little bit of dark above that. If you have some dark area that's just above the water, that's a good place to put maybe a little bit more shadow there. Remember to have a rocky looking shape, to a larger rock, you have to have light sides and dark sides. And if you don't get the dark in there pretty good, it's too light and it doesn't have shape. And it's the same with the dark. If you have too much dark and not enough light, you don't have a shape to it. Everything has to have a light side and a dark side. So there's the light side of these rocks, and then the dark side's falling over here on the left side. I'm going to pick up my fan brush and add just a touch or two of green right above the rock. I'm going to get just a little bit of green on those bottom portion of that dark that's right there. So it looks like you've got a few little weeds or something right in through there. And then I think we'll leave that area okay and for now, and move to the other side, back to the original side we were working on a while ago. And I've got some more dark in my brush. Now this little waterfall down here is not going to be as bright as these up there, so it's going to have more Payne's Gray and not as much open area for the light. I'm going to leave a little edge of light here. You can do a little edge of light where that waterfall is going to fall over, so we won't lose where it's going. And then let's see, we'll just come on over this whole dark side here, quite dark. Then we can make our water fall where we want it to. So this is continuation of dark. Once we have dark in there, we can make it into rocks or we can make it into waterfall. There's going to be some foam patterns. We are going to have some foam patterns, so I'm going to kind of leave some of this thinly painted so it can be foamy. And you'll see shortly what we're going to do with our foamy brush strokes. It's kind of neat. See, I'm just kind of stretching a little bit of paint out here where this is going to be more into the foam. So I'm not covering it entirely. This whole area, in fact, let's see, we're going to have some waterfall coming over this way. All of this is going to be foamy, and down here is going to be some more dark and probably some foam. So whatever you've got left over down here, you can make into water with a lot of foam going on. And I'm working around this big rock, that big old boulder laying there in the stream. Okay, let's see, and we've got some, this is more water underneath the rock. All of this, kind of where you've got those marked off lines there, from there on down to the bottom of the canvas is going to be dark, because this is water. Okay. Okay, now I'm coming back up to the upper falls, so let's move our eyes on up here. And I'm going to put just a little bit more dark in under the falls. And I'm taking my brush and putting some thin paint in here, kind of doing little circly strokes. That's where your foam's going to be. I don't want a lot of paint there, but I want a little. And there's a lot of foam patterns going on over here too. So this is kind of thin paint on there. It's not particularly wet thin, it's just not a lot of paint. Get a little bit more in my brush here. See, that's going to be foam. So this is going on kind of a light value of Payne's Gray. Kind of circly strokes right on the end of the brush. Same thing down here. This is going to be mostly foam too, maybe a few rocks in it as well. Okay, now I'm going to go to my fan brush. I think I've got some green in it, so I better clean it out here a little bit. Work it out. Okay, now I'm picking up some white on my fan brush, just a little bit on the end of the bristles there. And the water is coming, this is all water. This is coming down, and then when it pours over, we're going to pour it with the direction it's going. It's kind of coming from back here, but it's not going to be very white back here. Just see a little bit of movement line is all. Then when it comes down, I've got to have more paint on my brush. And it's coming right on the edge of your fan brush and then coming over the edge. And then watch what it's going to do right here. It's going to churn. The water's, see, I've got some white, not a lot, don't get gobs, just a little bit on the corner of your brush. And come down and do circular strokes, very circular. Come on out into the edges of the Payne's Gray. You have to reload your brush fairly often, but not tons of paint. Come down, flick it over, falling over, and then it goes circle, 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 circle. Right on the end of the bristles. See, the brush is kind of standing up, so you're right on the end of your bristles. Don't want to churn a lot of brown rock color into it, so I'm kind of staying away from that, from the bank there. A little bit of paint at a time is fine, and then when it hits this dark down here, it's at the bottom of the falls, and so your white streaks, if you have any at all, are going to run flat with on top of the water. They run flat. And over here, let's go churn, churn, churn again. Splash, splash. Doesn't have to be a lot of paint at a time, but enough that you can whip it up into a frothy looking splashes. Like it to be nice and white up there though, where the light is hitting it. That's where the light's hitting it. See, it's coming in, your light's coming across here, and it's hitting that area. And then down in here it's more blue because you're down in the shadows and you're whipping that water up into a frothy foam. And then quit before you whip it too far. That's hard to know when that is, but try to get out of it before you blend it to death. Then I come back and I look at my bank over there. I take my small background brush and maybe just a little bit more dark and make sure I have enough bank here that's going to hold the waterfall in. So you may need, like I have done here, to pick up just a little bit more dark, Payne's Gray, raw umber dark, and put a little deeper cut right in there where your foam patterns can stay against that little drop. There's the ground, to see it's dropping over. And we'll make sure we've got a shadow there, and like we've got a deeper bank so that the water's not going to run out over here and flood the trees. Okay, see that little bank's now, it's deep enough, it's going to keep the water down here inside it. Okay, now then your water's hit the bottom here and you're coming across. So I'm going to have a little bit of straight white right on the edge of my, whoops, that's way too much. White right on the edge of the fan brush and do a few little movement lines coming on down. And then when it gets down to here, it's going to fall again. And when it falls, you're coming over the edge. And then when it hits down here, you're going to have more spray. It just has to look natural, like it would naturally do that. See, I could have a longer little drop off there, or you can make that darker and not have the waterfall so far. It could have another rock or something there to hold it back if you choose to do that. But down here, whatever you have in the way of leftover foamy patterns needs to be right in here. You just really whip it up, just round and round and round. Keep your brush handle straight out. Don't lay it down and try to do it. I don't think that'll work quite as well for you. Get right on the end of the bristles and just go around and around. Maybe pull a little bit of white off into the dark there so it blends it. But this is the fun part. You can just go churn, churn, churn. Round, round, round. Let's put a little bit more right there where it's hitting and bouncing and looking foamier. Okay. Now then, we've got this big rock. We've got also some more highlights that need to go back up there. I'm going to come in with a small brush right now, picking up some of my raw umber Payne's Gray. And I'm going to come back up here under this rock and cut. I'm going to cut under it just a little bit so it gives it a little sharper edge, like it's laying right on top of the water right there. And you may not have those areas that need any correction, but you might need a little help somewhere else. It's a good idea to stand back and look at the painting from a little distance. See what it looks like from across the room, or at least 6 foot away, and see where you might need to add more light or more dark just to give everything a little bit better contrast than you had before. Don't want to close up too much of this water back here. We've got a lot of water coming down from the mountains here. Do a few little movement lines right in through there with white. Okay, then we've got it all churning and looking fluffy down here. It's looking good. I like a little bit of that orangey white. You can have a little touch of that somewhere. Maybe there's a little rock or some kind of a bit of color right in through there that needs to look like it has some of the orange picked up in it. But all of this is looking pretty good, and now I'm going to move on over here and we're going to base in this big rock. So back to your bristle brush, small background brush, back to the Payne's Gray Raw Umber mixture. There's going to be a little bit of highlight on this rock, but not a lot. But this is just, again, my brown and Payne's Gray. And we'll fill it in, and then we'll find a few highlights. Or we might leave just a little bit area unpainted for some of the highlights along the top edge of the rock. You can look at your picture there and you can see kind of where there's going to be some little light areas, and if you want to leave some of those open, that's fine. This rock's pretty dark. It has just a little bit of highlight. And along the shadowed edge where it drops off down toward the water, this is where it's the darkest, is on this lower edge here where it's away from the light. Okay, so we'll continue blocking this in with the really, really dark values. Lots of Payne's Gray, a little bit of raw umber. A little bit more Payne's Gray out. I've been using so much Payne's Gray, I'm about to run out here. Can't have that. Okay. Leave some little open areas for some of that highlight to stick in there. You could get it to some extent on top of the dark, but it's if you want it to be brighter or show up a little bit more, so it's a good idea to just leave a little unpainted areas for it. But I usually get carried away and paint the whole thing and forget about leaving them, so you can always put it back in. Oil paints are very forgiving. You can push them around, wipe them off, highlight them, put them back in, just whatever you want to do to them. Okay, there's a big rock now that we can cut up into several different sections, so we have it not all one big piece. So I'm going to clean the brush, clean the Payne's Gray dark out of the brush, dry it off pretty good. And I'm picking up my orange and a little white, a little bit of burnt sienna. So that's kind of highlight colors we've been working with. And let's see what it looks like. Maybe just a little strong. I'm going to add a little white to it. Little bits of highlight there, but I think it's still just a little potent. I'm going to put some dark over it, kind of dull it down a little bit with some raw umber. There we go, that looks better. But you can create several rocks out of one big one by just simply putting some lights on the top, pull a little dark down on the sides, and then get it broken up into different sections just with your lights and darks. See, I could come in and put another little rock shape in there instead of one big rock that would look maybe flat, like a big old flat rock. You could break it up into some littler pieces. And it's kind of fun because you never do two just alike. I mean, it can't be done. It's just all variations of shapes. Down in here, if I have some that's more of a blue-gray, you're getting away from the light. So put a little blue-gray in the rocks there, and you still have some different shapes in there. Back into the shadows on this far side over here, there's not very much in the way of highlight. I don't want a lot of orangey white, maybe just a little bit of blue white here and there. Big old rock. I'm going to come back with my fan brush and put just a little bit of foam patterns up over the base of it, just so it looks nicely nestled down into the water. Just like so. I think I'm going to darken this little bit of area back here. I've got too carried away with my blue, which is good because now you can see me paint it out. Because things can be moved around as you paint. So if I didn't want all of that waterfall back there, I could just come in and remove it and blend it right into the water and do something else with it. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Making mistakes is what helps you to become a better artist, because you learn how to fix your mistakes. And we all make mistakes. Okay, that's kind of blurred and softened that edge there where it runs out of the picture. We don't want it to be too prominent back there because it pulls your eye out of the painting. So we'll leave it more like that. Again, more little foam stuff down here at the base. If you've got your little brush going circly, you put a little bit of foam in there. Okay, now then, at this point in time we've got the canvas covered, and we could say it's done, or we could say let's refine it just a little bit more. And I usually do a little refining when I've got it to this point in time. Like I would maybe come in here and darken along the edges of this rock shape back here, and let's maybe even put a few little sticks and twigs in there with dark. So I could take the liner and I could set my little liner down and pull in some little wiggly twiggies that kind of disappear back here in the back of this old rock. And those go in very easily with your liner wet. You want the paint real wet. And while we're doing little twiggies, we could come on over to this area over here where we have we want to put a big rock, not a rock, but a branch in coming from that rock. It's laying on the rock on the bank there somewhere, and then they've got this old dead branch coming out over the water. Just something of interest. Working on that just a little bit more. And a lot of these things are optional, you know. If you don't feel like you've got a good place to put them, then don't push it, you know. Don't put them in there, just leave them out. But they add a little bit of interest. While I'm still in that corner there, I'm going to add just a few more little dark strokes down toward the bottom of that bank. So we'll get some nice dark shadows there. Make this branch a little wider maybe. Looks more like a fallen tree over there, or a very heavy branch. Okay. And then I just kind of look at it from it's good to step back and look at it from a distance and say, you know, what else would I do to improve it? And if you can't think of anything to improve it, then it's probably a good sign you need to quit, because if you keep playing with it, you will mess it up. And then you have to figure out how to fix it. So you say, oh, should have left that alone. And I do the same thing. I think everybody does. You think, oh, I'll do a few more strokes over here and it'll look better. Well, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'm maybe going to put just a few more little branches in along the edge of the water or the banks up here. Continue a little bit more here, and some little twiggies and sticks and twiggies and all of that. But then we're getting to the point where I think we could say it's done and not try to highlight it anymore. Just maybe a little bit more highlight on some of the rocks, and then we'll call it a day. Trying to get a little bit of orange and white here, so it just add a little bit of highlight maybe right up here. And then moving on toward the end of the waterfall over here on this side or somewhere back in here, I'm going to break up what appears to be a little bit of a straight line right there. So I try to avoid straight lines. And we'll add a few more little bits of highlight where the light's coming across and hitting on the bank and on the stones or whatever might happen to be there. Let's get that just a little brighter. The orange and the white makes a good highlight for the top of the rocks. Orange and blue being complementary colors, we've got a lot of blues in this, and then our oranges are our highlights, and that is a nice color combination. So okay, we're just about done with this one, but I think I see some areas I might want to touch up. Remember, you can always go back and touch things up. You can add to your darks or your lights or make any adjustments that you might want to make onto your canvas. I'm going to add just a little bit more dark here. I've already got some that in that area. But I'm going to pick up just a little bit of my Payne's Gray and my raw umber, and I'll just got a little bit on the brush. I'm going to add a little value in here that's a little darker. Not sure if that'll show up real good on your screen or not, but I hope it will. You can see I'm enhancing it and deepening the shadows a little bit. When you deepen your shadows, it's going to make your light areas look lighter as well. And we're going to come back and do a little more highlighting there too. So let's enhance just a little bit in through here and maybe up here on this bank. You can look at what you've done as you paint and make any kind of color adjustments that you think are necessary. And sometimes people even like to let their painting dry completely, and then they'll come in and do other little adjustments. So it doesn't have to be done until you really think it's done. Okay, I'm going to do that and maybe just a little bit right in through here where I've got some nice dark values I want to show up there. Okay, so I've enhanced the dark just a little bit in places where I thought it might be a little bit too gray. Now then we're going to put a little bit more highlight in our trees. We want that sunlight to really hit those tree branches and the tree trunks. This is just a little touch of more orange in the white. And you can just kind of draw in some little bits of soft, just a light touch, soft touch with your liner, and add just those little extra bits of color, and it just kind of puts a little sparkle on the trees. This is just orange and white with just a little bit of yellow. Let's move over here and do just a little bit up here. My little fingernail kind of goes down to hold me away from the canvas as I'm working on these wet areas here. And we'll just get a few little bits and pieces of this light. And it's hard to know when to quit, but I think that might be enough right there. Okay, let's switch brushes. I'm going to move now to my detail flat. Some of the same general color, orange and white, just a tiny bit of yellow. And let's come up here to the rocks. I'm going to move over here to this big rock here, and let's throw just a little bit of light on it, just a little extra. Maybe just a touch more orange. Orange and white, some pretty highlight colors, and we've got a little bit of it hitting here right across the edge of the falls here. Move over into this area and let's do just a few little bits and pieces of the bright color. Make it look like you've got some little ground there that's catching the light. That'll look good. And just a little bit more orange. Don't want to get it too bright, but it's hard to know what exactly the amount that you want. Just kind of use your imagination and figure out where that light's going to hit along on that bank. And then we're going to move on over here. I'm going to put just a little bit of an edge on that tree again. And moving on over in here, there's a little bit of it. I'm just enhancing what I did before. And then come and move back over here. Your little path just kind of goes back through the trees right here, and we kind of see a little grassy area back there, so that will fade away into softer, lighter values. Okay, let's move on over this way, and perhaps just a little bit extra light has hit the edge of that big rock right there. Soften it in. Alright, and coming on down, maybe just a little bit more on some of these big rocks here. I've got quite a bit of what I need, I think, anyway. A little bit of extra there. And over here I might, this doesn't have to be as bright down here, as our center of interest and our light area is right up here. This is kind of where we want people to look, and so we have enhanced most of this area up here, and with just a small amount still left to touch up on these big rocks right here. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the white, and so I'm going to clean my brush out. And okay, now cleaning it in my brush cleaner, and then I dry it out nicely. And coming back up here on the waterfall, I'm going to see if we can add just a little bit more fluffy, soft, foamy areas where this water comes crashing over. If you get right on the end of your brush, it works pretty well. And I also like to use the corner of a fan brush when I'm doing this kind of stuff. I go little circular strokes with the white. You can lay it on with the corner of the fan too. You don't have to use the detail flat. In fact, this works a little better to make it look foamy. It's just a small amount of white. I'm not thinning it. Just a little bit on the corner of the brush and kind of around and around so it looks real puffy and soft. And leave it down here. This is where it's going to look the brightest, maybe a little bit kind of pulling over the edge there. Moving on over, let's get just a little bit more. Small amount at a time is what you want to do. If you get too heavy with it, then you get too much and it's hard to control it. Coming in here, let a little bit extra fall over here. Take the dry corner of the brush and go around and around a little bit to make that foam look puffy. Okay, now then, I'm coming back to my small brush, detail flat. I'm going to add some of these definite white movement lines just above the falls. Kind of zigzag them a little bit. We don't want them too straight and too long. Just a little bit's all that's necessary. A little bit more over here on the other side. Water's coming around these big rocks and it's going to splash around over here and run. When it's running, we get that little wiggly, zigzaggy back and forth stroke. Let's get quite a bit of white right here against the bank. That looks good right there to enhance that a little bit. And then all of this that's falling over the rocks, well, there really isn't that much that's coming over these big rocks. Just a little bit, just kind of a little stream here and there. Kind of soften it in. Use your imagination, because no one does it the same exactly. When you've got a class full of people, everyone's painting it just a little bit differently, so that's good. We don't want to all be carbon copies of each other. Again, I'm going to put a little bit more down here, enhance that foaminess. Maybe just a little over in here. And let it fade off at the sides. It needs to be a little whiter probably, if anything, in the center part. And then as you go off toward the edges, it's a little grayer and softer looking. Be sure you've got it showing under these rocks like you've got a little bit over here. Kind of enhance that a little bit, and I think we're just about to get that much done. We don't want to do too much. Let me go to my liner. I want to put some little twigs and things over here that we didn't do. So I'm going in with some dark color here. This is thinning the paint with a little turp and a little bit of my raw umber. So this is a little branch that's coming in from somewhere outside the picture. Just kind of a little wiggly lines there where we get that little stick kind of looking in, it's leaning in toward the middle of the painting, so people will follow the eye and follow the stroke directions with your eyes and bring that into your center of your painting, pointing toward the lighter area there. Don't need a whole lot on that little twig, just enough to kind of make it show up there. We want to step back and look at it once in a while and feel like, are we done? Are we done? Or do we need a little bit more here or there? It's looking pretty good. I think I have just about as much in there as I need. Okay, as I step back and look, I think I've found where I need to add a little more green up here in the trees. This is dark area, kind of makes a circle there, so we want to watch for areas that do that. So I'm going to mix a little bit more of my light green with my blue and yellow. A little bit of Payne's Gray and yellow, Payne's Gray being the blue. And yellow, and add some white to it, maybe just a touch. That's too much white. See, you just got to check it once in a while before you just put a whole bunch on there. Just a few little touches right in through there. Drizzle a little over back and forth, and maybe right there in the center to cover up what was a kind of a dark hole that we had up there. Always pays to step back and look at it as a whole as your painting develops. Okay, that took care of that area. Alright, now then, I'm going to clean my fan brush and go back into the white. As I look at it, I think we could probably have some more splashing going on down here at the bottom of that falls. That's really a lot of water coming crashing over, so we could do a little bit whiter here and make it look a little more foamy. Bring some of it up a little bit on as it comes over the falls, and then when it hits the bottom here, it's going to disperse and run out across the top of the water that's already fallen over. And let's get a little bit more in this area. I'm not picking up too much at a time, just a little, so that we don't overload on it. A little bit more up there. Okay, I think that's enough of that. And let's see, let's look it over and see. I see another area that I think I might want to adjust. This little ground area that goes back into the light green, I see a dark line right there, kind of where those divisions are. I'm going to pick up just a little bit more of my orangey white bright color, and we'll just soften that little line right there. And there it goes. So that's good. Hit that tree trunk, pull it down just a little bit. You know, you always have to find a place to stop, and it's hard to find it sometimes. I'm going to move over here and hit just a little edge of something, just barely a little bit of a pinky white right in through there where it might catch on top of that bank there. There's just a little bit of sunlight there between the water and the bank. So we're just looking it over to see if we need to do anything else. And I put these little branches in earlier on, but they could be a little bit darker. I'm going to pick up with my liner just a little bit of Payne's Gray and raw umber, kind of thin it down a little bit and come back over these areas where they're going to really stand away in front of the falls. So we'll just come out with that's an old dead tree back in there, and we might want to make it look a little darker so it really pulls away from what's behind it. Kind of helps to keep your eye in the painting, to have something like this pointing down in toward the painting. So we'll put that in. Yeah, I do see something I need to change. A while ago I put in a little bit of that light green and it made a little bit of the circle effect, so I'm going to soften that out with a little flat brush there, so it, see, now it's going away so it doesn't look like it was a spot of something. It's easy to get those little spots and not even think about it, and then when you step back and look at it, you go, oh, that looks like I dropped something right there. So that way it's taken care of, so that's worked itself out. I hope you enjoyed this painting. This has been fun for me, and I hope it has been for you. If you enjoyed it, look up our website, www.dorothydent.com. We're coming to you from Painter's Corner, my studio right here in Republic, Missouri. If you're in the area, stop by and see us or give us a call. See you another time. Bye-bye.